Hey, everybody. Welcome to No Fear, the podcast that explores the boundaries of courage and fear. I'm Pete Pepe, one of the co-founding members of 3777. I have the great pleasure of having the other two co-founding members with me today. To my left, Mr. Eero Sepen, and directly across from me, if I'm looking straight at him, Mr. Jeb Corliss. Welcome, guys. Okay, just to set this up today for our theme, when I say this term, neither of you kick me under the table or punch me in the face, please, because this term I'm about to throw out has a very negative connotation right here in this circle, especially with these guys, especially that one. So what we're going to be talking about today is adrenaline junkies. Now, junkie, if I'm not mistaken, does not have a positive connotation to it at all. It is very negative. So we're going to be talking and breaking down adrenaline junkie and the stereotype of it. And then once we do that and obliterate that and rebuild it, we're going to be breaking it down further. And we're going to be talking about adrenaline versus drugs. So this is going to be a good episode. It's going to be a heavy one. But to kick things off, to get it rolling with no more screwing around, I'm going to toss it over to Eero to get it going.
Thanks, Pete. And before I get going and before we dive into today's theme, I want to encourage you to visit our home. The address is going to be bling, bling, bling somewhere over here. And it will be at the end of the podcast with special effects and cool music and fire. No pressure, Perttis. But anyhow, the reason why I'm encouraging you to go visit our homepage is because that's the pulse of our tribe. We posted a lot of pictures, videos, and most importantly, blogs. And Jeb here wrote a blog 5 months ago, and it was really interesting, and it's like a discussion-provoking ideas, and I think that it has enough of a substance for an entire podcast for us to chat today. And so the theme, like you already said, is going to be drugs versus adrenaline and all the stereotypes that comes with it. So Jeb, let me ask you a question. Actually, before I ask you the question, so I'm going to a little bit more define. So drugs is a broad umbrella of all the things that people are using to escape the reality in many instances, and adrenaline is our body's natural mechanism to keep us alive and to optimize our performances in dangerous situations, and it works hand in hand with dopamine, and dopamine is usually what's contributed to natural highs, so that makes us feel good after we've been successful after a skydive or something like that. So now that we kind of have these terms underlined, I'm going to ask a question from Jeb that I'm pretending that I wouldn't know you, and it would be it would be just based on your decades-long career of doing shark diving and base jumping and skydiving and wingsuit flying. So obviously you've done this for so long, so you must be an adrenaline junkie. Otherwise, you've already quit this, so right?
No.
What would you say to a person like that? I'm sure you heard that question or like a quote a million times.
You know, it's funny. When I was in college, I was taking a class in psychology, and I had a teacher, and at the time I was just getting into skydiving. I'd been shark diving for quite some time. And after talking to me a little bit, she's like, oh, well, you're an obvious, sensation-seeking personality. And I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe. And she's like, well, we've got a test, and I'm going to give it to the whole class because I find this is a great teaching moment. She's like, but you're obviously, and she called it a type T, which was apparently the sensation-seeking, component of like personalities. So I took the test along with the rest of the class, and what was fascinating is I actually turned out not to be type T, which she was very shocked about, because as it turns out, type T and sensation-seeking personalities they take a lot of risks. So it's usually lots of sexual partners, they'll take lots of drugs, they do anything that gives them a high or a sensation of some kind. As it turns out, that wasn't my motivation for doing the things that I was doing. I wasn't a sensation seeker. I took very high risks in certain things. So it came to like shark diving or skydiving, or I wanted to be a base jumper. I was very high on the list. But when it came to, at that point, I only had one girlfriend. I didn't take any drugs. I didn't drink. I didn't do anything that was based on sensation seeking. So I scored very low in those categories, which when you put them both together, put me in the middle and made me basically normal, which was kind of strange, which she wasn't expecting. Most people who talk to me don't think that way. But I guess for me, I've been being called an adrenaline junkie for a long time. I even did a show on Discovery called Stunt Junkies. And it was funny because when they told me what the name was going to be, like when we started doing it, the name didn't have a name for the show. And they were coming up with it, and they're like, yeah, we're going to do Stunt Junkies. And I'm like, could we use another name? I mean, I don't really like that. And they're like, well, Jeb, we really do, so we're going to use it. And I'm like, well, that connotates like drug use, you know, and I'm very anti-drug. Like, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't take any drugs of any kind. I don't even take painkillers. If I have a headache, I don't take a Tylenol or an aspirin. I don't drink coffee. Like, I try to avoid caffeine as much as I can. So, you know, I'm kind of like, I take offense to if you call it you know, an addict to drugs, and I really do think there's a major difference between adrenaline and drug use. I do not see them as the same thing. I don't know if you want me to get into all that right now, or if you want to talk about a little other things first. But that it's a very, I mean, I have a lot to say about that.
Yeah, well, I think we can tap into, because I think it's important that that we'll see like the positive impact. A lot of people, like we're talking about this stamp of being a junkie, people oversee all those like positive impacts that for a person who's participating in this sport has, and how expanding and it's not about the adrenaline. It's never about the adrenaline when you do this type of. Well, it might be a little bit. For me at least, it was a great sensation afterwards. Right. But it was all the preparation. It was all the planning. It was the feeling that I did this. Like, I overcome my fear. I did something. So. Kind of for me, the adrenaline was always a bonus. For me, it was always a personal journey to have more courage and see what a human can do.
Well, let me ask you guys, break down why you hate that stereotype. Like, why do people consistently label athletes, especially in the stream world, adrenaline junkie, right? That's just so loosely thrown around.
Well, I can't really speak for other people. I don't know why people do what they do, like why people like try to put us into that little box. But from what I've gathered, like just existing on this planet and doing the things that I do and having people try to categorize me, I'm constantly being like, even my teacher in college was trying to categorize me as something. And it turns out that I don't fit into these people's simple little boxes. You know, I'm a different kind of creature, and a lot of people are sensation seekers. That is a real thing, and there are a lot of base jumpers and people who do high risk activities do fit into that box. Some of them. I just don't.
And that's interesting, because I haven't been like categorized the same way as you have, but I can recognize a lot of the traits and my lifestyle and kind of the life that I live, that I probably am a sensation-seeking personality. And that was when I was, especially when I was in my younger years. And but now, having becoming a father, I think it's interesting. I've been kind of contemplating the idea of like what drove me to dangerous life and risk-taking in general, and is it something that my kids could inherit from me? And then I started to look into kind of this. Origins of our risk-taking patterns and behavior, and how much it's in our DNA and how much it's in the environment. And I came to learn about this gene that is a DRD7-7R. And
good memory.
Yeah, and it's usually like, I mean, the easier name is Wanderlust genes, and it got that name because first when Homo sapiens started to do the migration out of Africa, that gene started to appear in us, and what it does, it produces less dopamine. So the person who has that gene is more likely being pulled in the type of behavior,
taking higher risks,
higher risk, and they can be anything. At the time, like when our early evolution, it was like Wanderlust gene. It makes us kind of going to see what's behind the other mountain and
migrate.
And migrate generally. So, but in the modern society, it like appears in different ways, which can be our sports and all types of other risky
and you have to think about it. That's what got people to go into little wooden boats and cross oceans to see what was on the other side, and climb mountains to see what was on the other side, and put themselves in little metal tubes and shoot themselves into space. I mean, that's what makes us evolve and grow. So you can see why it's important and why it was put into our genes. But to go back to the kind of concept of, you know, the difference between, like, I don't see myself as a sensation seeker or an adrenaline junkie. I actually don't think I like adrenaline very much. When I started, maybe when I was a teenager, maybe I kind of got some little kick out of it. But later in life, it stopped being about that real quick. And I stopped enjoying the way it made me feel to be terrified, especially when people started dying. Like when it started getting real and I started getting seriously injured and people started dying all around me, the concept of doing this shit for fun was not there for me. Like, this was not what I was doing for fun. And I think that I'm motivated not by the sensation or by the way it makes me feel. I'm motivated by doing something that seems impossible. So I would say it's like this. I would say if you look at an astronaut, right? And I'm not pretending that what I do is as important as astronauts, not at all. But it's a mindset. And you would never call an astronaut an adrenaline junkie. Never. Like, that's not what they are. You would never think of them that way. You would never call them that. Now, do they get adrenaline from shooting themselves into outer space in a rocket? Absolutely. But that's a negative byproduct of what they're doing. And it's something they have to deal with. But that's not why they're going to space, right? So they're actually trying to push the boundaries of what human beings are capable of doing. They're trying to actually make the human species evolve, and we're trying to find new lands, new worlds to get to. That's what they're doing. They're doing a very difficult task that's very dangerous, and they're trying to do it in the safest way they possibly can. And that's always been my approach to base jumping. And most of the dangers, like diving with sharks, skydiving, flying wingsuits, all the things, even like surfing and climbing, and everything I do is about doing difficult things that are really hard and challenging for me, right? Trying to do something that I think is difficult, or most people, when I tell them I want to do it, think it's impossible. So I create this like very complicated, difficult thing to accomplish, and then I try to figure out how to do it in the safest way I possibly can. And it's not about adrenaline. Now, do I get adrenaline while doing it? Of course you do, because it's scary and it's dangerous and it can potentially kill you. But that's not the motivation. That's not why. That's why I kind of, when people start going, well, you're just like a drug addict. You're just like, adrenaline is just like heroin, and you're just like a heroin addict. And I'm like, dude, no, I'm not. If I could do it without getting that feeling, I would. Yeah. But this is what's important. The real distinction between the drug and the adrenaline is, I think that in general, I mean, I've been around drugs my entire life. My father was a drug addict. All of his friends were drug addicts. My sisters got into drugs. All of their friends were in drugs. I was in extreme sports, and there's a lot of drug addicts in sports. So I've been around a lot of drugs. And what I've seen is a lot of people who use drugs, and I'm including alcohol in that, is it's a person who doesn't necessarily like the reality in which they exist. And what they're doing is they're trying to separate themselves from it. They're trying to either numb it out, or they're trying to disconnect from the reality in which they're in. That's what I've seen with drugs. It seems like a person who's in pain, either psychologically or even physically, and they're taking the drug to disconnect from that pain, right? They did that reality. They don't want to be in it. Whereas I think people who base jump, who are doing, or not just base jumping, it's anyone who does sports or dangerous activities, things that can hurt or kill them, things that induce adrenaline, right? I think that these people are actually trying to connect to the reality in which they live. So when you do a dangerous act, let's just talk about base jumping, right? So you're going to do a dangerous base jump that you know can potentially kill you. Well, a very important thing happens. Something special happens, which is what you talked about earlier, an endorphin release that then basically gives you a heightened sense of awareness. Time starts distorting and stretching. You start actually, your vision gets better. You can smell better, taste. You can feel the air touching your skin. This experience is you literally connecting to the reality in which you exist in the most pure, powerful form I've ever experienced. And so that, to me, is the exact opposite of taking a drug, where a person just literally sits on their couch, injects a sensation, just lays there and stares at a ceiling, completely disconnecting to the reality that they're in.
Interesting. So let me ask you, so just from a sensation-wise for both of you guys, you can both answer this. When you guys are jumping, and I know there's all the fear and everything comes in when you're on the fixed object. Again, we're talking about base jumping just as our example. But once you leave, of course, the fear goes away because you're in the act now. When the adrenaline starts to come in, and like you're saying, this is a byproduct of the act itself. It seems like when you guys talk about it, you're not going, oh, I'm sucking up the adrenaline. Whoa, this is so great. It sounds like you're basically going, fucking get out of my way, the adrenaline. And it's all about focus. And like you said, being as present as possible.
And surviving.
Right. It's not about, oh, I'm feeling the rush. I mean, boom, you're hitting the fucking ground and you're dead. So it seems like it's interesting that Adrenaline Junkie's this title, and it's like, you can't operate if you're trying to experience the adrenaline side of the rush, right?
Yeah, no, I understand. Like, no one, like, in my opinion, it's not that rush. Like, I think it's, for me, I have a really busy mind. So, like, I'm constantly thinking million things at the same time. But it's like when I start approaching something dangerous, that adrenaline starts to be released into my body, then that's kind of helps me to focus. first it's there that it helps me to figure out what I'm doing, that I'm not hurting myself, and that helped, like that those thoughts that are provoked by the adrenaline. My lizard brain is starting to go through all these processes. Is my gear packed right? Do I have the right things? Am I prepared? Okay. But then it's important, and that comes with the practice, to be able to shut it off. Like, you want to let like enough of fear in that it keeps you safe, but you don't want to like give too much, so you lock and you die. Right. So then it's that defining the balance. And then you can truly concentrate. So for me, there is not that many moments when I feel like truly free and not bothered by anyone or anything in my life. And that's kind of a few seconds of joy that I really appreciated. But for me, the adrenaline and the dopamine, the endorphins came afterwards, and it was a bonus. But it's always a
but also it's about connecting. Right. Yeah. So when you're going through this, you feel absolutely connected to everything that's around you. And I think that a big part of this, like you're talking about, the focus, right? So what this does is it puts you into, Buddhists called it the now, there's flow state, there's time distortion, there's lots of different names for this experience. But really what it is, it's about connecting to the reality in which you exist, which, people always are asking, like, what's the meaning of life? Like, what's the point of existence? Like, why are we here? Like, what is any of this? And I personally think that, we've developed senses over billions of years. I'm not just talking about human beings. I'm talking about all living things on this planet that have developed senses. The reason why a bat can see in sonar, right, and has its senses is so it can interact with the reality that exists outside of itself. And all of our senses have been developed over billions of years for one purpose: to interact with reality. That's the entire point. That's why we're here. That's why we exist. Otherwise, we're just a brain and a skull. We're not really, nothing's going on. So this interaction with reality is the point of life. And for me, I think drugs are actually detaching from your senses and disconnecting from life, and the opposite of what I'm trying to do in my existence. Whereas base jumping is it's forcing you into now. So this is a great way to say it. When you're about to step off a cliff, and and then you can't fake this, like you can't VR this or, pretend this, that what you're doing is dangerous. You know that if you make a mistake in the next couple seconds, you will die. I'm not going to get hurt. No, you're going to die. It's a different experience. And when you put yourself in that experience, there is no yesterday. You're not thinking about your bills. You're not thinking about what happened last week when you're got in an argument with your girlfriend, or you're not thinking about any of that. And as far as tomorrow you may not be here in 10 seconds. If you don't do what's right now, your life will end. So what it does, it forces you into that moment. Right? And you'll have a Buddhist monk sitting in a temple for 60 years trying to get there. And sometimes they never do. To get into that moment is actually quite tricky. It sounds easy to just push everything out and only exist in this moment, but it's not an easy thing to do. But whenever you do a dangerous activity like base jumping, big wave surfing, climbing, there's lots of things that can put you there. Getting in a car accident, not even on purpose, But there are things that all of a sudden happen that put you in this moment right now. And that is powerful. Like when you've actually experienced being in the now, in this moment, holy crap. It really is a connection to the reality in which we live in such a pure, powerful way that is the entire point of life. That is why we exist. Yeah. And to me, I don't think there's anything more important and more opposite. And then when you hear the word junkie, right, that implies being out of control. I think the reason why anyone who does any of these extreme activities is because they want to be in control. It's literally the opposite. It's the opposite in every way, shape, and form. That's why I take such, I don't like when people call me a junkie. In any ways, well, no. Let me put it this way. I do have addictions, like everyone. I'm addicted to sugar. Sugar, I think, is one of the most used drugs, like abused drugs the world has. And most people don't even see sugar as a drug. I do, and I understand that I'm a junkie. I love cheesecake. I can't help it. I'm becoming a chubbo because of it, but that's just the reality, I am addicted to sugar, and I understand that. And if you call me a sugar junkie, I'm like, can't argue. I'm there. You got me on that. But if you're going to call me a heroin addict, I don't use heroin. I don't drink. I don't, and as far as I'm concerned, adrenaline, I don't need adrenaline to function on this planet. Now, is it a great thing that helps me when I'm doing a dangerous thing? Does it help me focus? Is it a natural thing that occurs when you do something dangerous? Absolutely. Right. But that does not make you a junkie.
Right. It's a component of the act itself.
Yeah.
That's something like you were explaining, Eero, that it's just a natural thing that if you didn't have it, something bad could
you would die.
You'll probably die. Yeah,
There's probably been some people who haven't had it, but
they don't last long.
And it's interesting where again, it's just constantly thrown out. We see it in films and so on and so forth. There's like adrenaline. They're seeking the rush. They're seeking the high.
Well,
it's just become such a weird.
You know what's interesting? I had something called adrenal fatigue syndrome. Have you guys ever heard of that? Okay,
Explain.
So when I was 30, I went through a lot of really heavy shit. I can't get into it, but it was heavy, and it caused a very serious condition, which is called adrenal fatigue syndrome, which means I stopped producing adrenaline, or at least I produced it in such a small amount that I was no longer feeling it when I would base jump. So I didn't realize I was having a problem at first because it takes a little bit for you to kind of get it. And how it started was I was sleeping like 16 hours. And I could never get enough sleep. Like I was just tired all the time. And that didn't make me go to the doctor for some reason. And then I was in Switzerland and I was doing a base jump. And it was like, a handstand, like front flip with double, like a twist. And like it was like something super complicated, crazy thing. And I was jumping a brand new rig. And on deployment, my harness basically detached on one side. There was something wrong with the hardware, and I almost slipped out of the gear. And it basically, half the harness came off completely, and I was like, oh shit, I'm literally only in half the harness, I'm coming down, I land, and as my body unloads, the other part of the harness comes off. No. Oh. I almost fell out of my harness and died, okay? Like, it was a near-death experience. My heart rate didn't go up. I didn't get scared. I didn't feel anything. And that was when I realized, oh shit, there is something wrong. Because I should have had an adrenaline rush.
Your hands should be shaking.
I felt nothing. And I'm like, and I contacted the manufacturer and I told them the issue and they're like, oh, we're really sorry. I'm like, yeah, dude, there's a problem. We got to figure out what that was. I mean, I literally almost died.
Wow.
But anyway, I went to the doctor because obviously there was an issue, and they did a whole bunch of tests. They ran everything. It turned out I had acute mercury poisoning. I'd been eating like tuna. Like I was down like 4% body fat, and I was just getting all ripped out, and I was just like eating tuna all day, every day, and apparently that's bad for you. So it wasn't good. So I had acute mercury poisoning, but beyond that, I had adrenal fatigue syndrome. They saw that I was no longer producing adrenaline, and I'm like, well, what exactly? I mean, obviously, the mercury poisoning, stop eating so much fish. That was the first thing you do. So eliminate what's getting the mercury in you. But then it was also this adrenal thing. And I'm like, well, what do I do? And they're like, well, you have to stop doing things that stress you out. I mean, that's the only thing you can do is you got to rest when you feel tired, sleep, eat healthy, like take your vitamins, and don't get stressed. Like you have to stay away from stressful experiences. And your body should recalibrate, and it should, and they gave me something else. They gave me cortisol. I think they gave me some cortisol that was supposed to help like activate me when whatever. So I had to take that for like 6 months or something, and it took about a year for me to finally recover. And
so finally you're doing a base jump and you almost fuck up and you get so scared. Yes, I nearly died. I'm afraid. I love it.
Well, where I really started noticing it to begin with was I just wasn't tired all the time. Like I wasn't sleeping 16 hours a day. And that was in the funny thing about adrenaline is adrenaline's good for you in small doses. Like if you do, like base jumping is great because it's quick. Like it doesn't last a long time. But where it becomes where it can turn into PTSD or become damaging is when you sustain adrenaline for long periods of time. So that's why soldiers, they have a much higher incident of PTSD than extreme sports athletes, partially because we choose to do what we're doing. They're usually forced into a situation that's not pleasant. But they have to sit in that situation for days, weeks, months, sometimes years.
That's interesting, yeah.
And then that long exposure to adrenaline is what causes damage. At least that's the stuff that I was told by the doctors who I was working with.
Well, I think we've seen now the adrenaline side, and we've seen it actually how beneficial it is us, like not the adrenaline itself, but kind of the umbrella that is put to actions that can lead into adrenaline, and it has those actions and those activities have had a very positive things in our life. But let's talk about drugs, because I love the fact that you never explored in alcohol. Well, one time, like you can tell the story. So there's one time, but then drugs never. So you always had a very clear focus and priorities in your life, and also I think that helped like Chep's dedication to me sober also helped my base jumping career, because if we became best friends and we traveled for years, we traveled everything together, and if I met someone little like rascal like myself, I think the focus would have maybe gone away from jumping into something else. But with you, like we always, like we went, if we go like jumping, we go jumping. If we go shark diving, we go shark diving. So
That's
always
cool.
like, you have your priorities, and that made us do amazing experiences. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about your attitude towards drugs. And I know a lot of it that dates back from the childhood, but I like, if you can tell your story, and I especially love it, like your point of view about the smoking and how you have to get the real experiences rather than making dull ones. Maybe you can a little bit go in that direction, if I can direct you there.
So I guess the best way to say it is my dad was a drug addict, right? So a great way to not want to do something is to have a negative example, which my father was. And not just him, but his friends. And I got to watch them use drugs my whole life, and I saw no benefits. Like, I just saw a lot of real negative stuff, and it negatively impacted my life. So I didn't like them right away, just because I saw my father and what he became and did. As far as drinking is concerned, my dad was like giving me like, what's it called? The sake.
Yeah.
So we would go to like Japanese restaurants when I was like 5, and he'd give me little things of sake and stuff. So he was already starting to program me to become an addict. Like, he was literally from young just giving me this stuff. But when I was 8 years old, I had a babysitter who thought it'd be super hilarious to get me drunk. So she gave me this big glass of ouzo, which is like this licorice. It tastes like, so I used to love black licorice. Like, I was a big fan of black licorice as a little kid. But after drinking this, I got alcohol poisoning and I almost died. Like, it was super, like, it was not good. And I got what's known as classical conditioning. So after that experience, I could not smell alcohol. I could not be around alcohol or licorice, but alcohol. Basically, I couldn't even date a girl who wore perfume until I was in my mid-20s, because even the smell of alcohol and perfume made me want to throw up. So it was such a strong, visceral experience that I couldn't be around alcohol. And it was funny because I turned 21, and my friends at the time were like, "Hey, let's go to the bar." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? I don't drink." They're like, "Yeah, but you're 21. You got to drink." I'm like, "Did you think I wasn't drinking because I wasn't 21? Are you on crack? I mean, you really think that was the reason? I mean, there's a reason why I don't drink, and that has nothing to do with it." But that's kind of where the drinking thing came from. But I then it became kind of philosophical, because I actually, honestly, now at 48, the smell of alcohol doesn't make me sick anymore. I could probably drink it if I wanted to, but philosophically, I wouldn't. Like, I don't want to. And the reason why is this started adapting when I was in my early 20s. Is it went from just being the fact I didn't like the fact that my father did it and my sisters, and seeing them and like what they went through, and just seeing a lot of negativity. Like, it just seems super negative. There became a philosophical component to it. And I started kind of like, one day I was with a buddy of mine. He smoked weed all the time. He was super funny. And this is, I got to say this, to everyone. I don't judge. If people want to use drugs, that's your life. You can do what you want with it. I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. Do what you want. I'm only talking about myself, right? When I say all of these things, this is why I don't do it. This is why I'm not going to do it. This is why I don't like it. But if you do it and you love it, more power to you. If it's benefited your life in some way, if you've had a different experience, good for you. That's just not my experience. So I had a best friend. He smoked weed every day, all day. He woke up smoking it. He went to sleep smoking it. Every meal, every movie,
Wow.
He thought that it enhanced everything, right? Which, whatever. He was a funny dude. I enjoyed him. I liked him. We were good buddies. But one day I'm sitting in like his house, and I have a window open. He's smoking weed across the room from me, and I'm just trying not to smell it because I think it smells gross. But anyways, he's like, "Yeah, dude, you got to try this. This stuff is so good." And I'm like, nah, dude, it's more, more weed for you. Don't waste your money on me. That stuff's expensive. Just, knock yourself out. Enjoy yourself. I'm good. He's like, no, man, you don't get it. When you smoke weed, it makes a double Western bacon cheeseburger taste so good. And I'm like, dude, I'm going to tell you what. I don't want a double Western bacon cheeseburger to taste so good. I want mediocre food to taste mediocre and good food to taste good. And I want to be able to discern the difference between the two. The last thing I want is to take a substance that makes mediocre shit amazing, right? To me, I think boredom is super important, right? When you get bored, what it forces you to do is get up off your ass and go out in the world and do something with your life, right? The last thing I want to do is the coolest thing I did all weekend was smoking weed and staring at my goddamn ceiling. Like that to me, I don't understand why you think that's awesome. I think that's the dumbest shit ever. But dude, more power to you if that's what you want to do. But me personally, I think that when you're not having a good time, that motivates you to go out and have a good time. And that's the same thing with like alcohol and stuff. I've had buddies take me to bars. I don't, I can handle it for like an hour because I watch it like a wildlife show. There's like the animals at the watering hole, and you see the gazelles over in the corner. You see a lion like checking them out, which one's the weak one. And
you always knew when you leave the parties, usually like before when people ended in the pools and things, but you learned to read the room quite well.
Oh yeah, and it was fun. And I say for the first hour, it was interesting to watch the lions, which are the dudes, looking at the gazelles, which were the girls, getting totally wasted and trying to pick out which one they're going to go kick down. And it was a fascinating thing because the gazelles had no concept that these guys are checking them out like to attack. So it was a very interesting experience witnessing it. But the one time I was talking to a buddy who was like, yeah, if you drank, you'd find this more fun. And I'm just like, well, why don't we just go do something that's fun? I mean, I hear you, but why would I do something where I have to get drunk to enjoy it when I can just go do something that's enjoyable to begin with? Like, this doesn't make sense. Like, I've never understood it. And I'll go into one more story just because it kind of coincides with this, like why I'm so against it philosophically, right? So I was doing a show for National Geographic, and it was about risk evaluation and taking risks, okay? And they, by the end of the show, they're like, oh, God, you're a very risky person. Like, what's too dangerous for you? I'm like, well, like, what do you think's too risky? And I'm like, honestly, I think getting drunk in a bar around a bunch of strangers is the goddamn scariest fucking thing you can do. Like, that's just way too risky. And the guy looks at me and he's like, wait, are you being serious right now? Like, are you kidding? And I'm like, well, let me put it this way. Imagine there was a pill, okay? And this pill made you stupid. And it made it so that you couldn't balance properly and you slur your speech. You can't operate a motor vehicle properly. That's what this pill does. Whatever your IQ is, it drops through the floor, right? And now imagine you take this pill, put it in your mouth, while you're around the single most dangerous predator the world has ever known, right? Which is other human beings, literally responsible for more death and rape and destruction and chaos and theft and anything horrible you can think that happens to people is done by other people, right? So now you're going to put yourself around the most dangerous predator the world has ever known, and you're going to take this pill that makes you a dumbass where you can't even think straight anymore. I think that is fucking insane. I can't wrap my head around it. I would rather you take me out in the ocean and drop me in the water with a great white shark covered in blood than do that. I mean, it's just insanity. And to me, I think that's crazy. I mean, crazy. And people do it every day.
But it has an upside. It gives you a cool dance move, and it makes you funny and sexy at the same time.
I've seen your dance moves, and they're not that good.
Well, the pill made me do it.
But anyway, so those are like my foundations philosophically why I don't do it for myself. Now, again, other people seem to be having fun. I've watched people seem to be enjoying themselves, but I will say this. In the process of them being drunk, they seem like they're having fun. But the next day, they don't seem like they're having much fun anymore. The next day, they're like, seem like they have headaches, and I hear this a lot. I'm never doing that again. I'm never.
My head. What happened?
We got to cut him some slack. He's finished. He's finished.
Yeah,
Come
that's
on.
part of our culture. That's part of our DNA.
It's a cultural thing.
It's everyone. It's not just him, dude. It's everyone. You have to remember, I am always sober. always. And I'm around people who aren't, always. So I get to see what's going on always. Like I'm always aware, like very hyper aware of what's happening at all times. And they're not. So it's a very fascinating thing to witness. And I've been witnessing it my entire life. And this is what makes humans remarkable. A lot of people are like, well, you've never taken drugs. What do you know? It's like, well, human beings learn by watching other human beings. We are really good at learning from watching others. So I've been doing that my entire life. I am a goddamn expert on drugs. Trust me, I don't need to take them to understand exactly what they do to human behavior. So that's what I think.
It's very profound. I think that was interesting. And
did you want to add to that?
No, I think this is a good moment, and that made just a reminder that adrenaline is something that expands our world, and then drugs are usually that people are trying to escape, and they're not something to be linked, and they have totally different motivations and reasons from doing them both. So I think, that's very inspirational speech that you give on that, and I'm really glad that we heard it.
Yeah.
And then I want to encourage all the viewers, unless you have some more questions.
Look, I just have, again, really quickly, because I heard the word in the now. And that's such a big thing now on Instagram and on social media. It was like, oh, be in the now, be in the now. And I'm like, it isn't the easiest thing to do.
It's next to impossible. It's very, very complicated.
And right. And it's interesting when you said it about when you guys are jumping, that gets you to that point. And I know it's something interesting. I don't know if is there something that we can tell the viewers, because again, I don't jump unless I'm jumping off my couch. No one's doing the extreme stuff that you guys are doing. Is there some way people can apply some of the stuff you're saying?
I think Jeff made an interesting point. It's a connection. It's a connection, and it's connecting with yourself, with the universe, and with the planet, and So I think it's important to seek for the connection. So we do the ultimate thing and the really dangerous one that has real consequences, and for different reasons. He's not sensation seeker. I'm probably but we still end up doing the same activities. But I wouldn't suggest people to take our route. But I think I would encourage people to be active and find that thing that helps you to connect with everything without maybe.
I'll say this: you hear about flow state in sports a lot, right? So whenever anyone gets really connected to a sport, for some reason they enter flow state, which is a version of the now, right? I think there's different levels and different extreme natures of that, but you'll hear basketball players talk about it, football players, you'll hear skiers, you'll hear any surfers. You hear it a lot with surfers. So when a person is connecting to something that they're doing, and usually it involves a physical, even yoga is about...
But it can be arts also, like anything. If you really end up the painting and writing, like time just goes by.
I got into it while I was writing my book. You can literally hit that moment through real immersion into, again, I like to call it reality. Once you are connecting to reality in a very powerful way, the reality in which you exist, that is when you get there. You know, when you can clear your mind of clutter, when you clear your mind of, thinking about the future and the worries of what can happen, or you're thinking about the past of like, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish, being able to get all that clutter out of your mind and just be present. It sounds easy, but it's really difficult. And anyone who does yoga knows how difficult it is not to let your mind wander. And the way
meditation.
Well, in meditation, but in yoga especially, they teach you about breathing, because if you concentrate on your breathing and you really do it, it's hard to think of anything else. So it helps you as long as you're thinking like breathe in, breathe out. Like that's that simple thought process of just thinking about your breath can help you get there. But anyone who's tried it, see how long you can do it. See how long you can think about just your breath. It's not easy. And that's why I think extreme sports or these things help people get there. And sports help people get there.
And music. I know I had it when I was playing drums and I was on tour. And again, I know there's drugs in the music that kind of connects, but we did not do drugs in our band. We never did it, especially if performing. We were in it, and like you said, you go into that zone, and it was just all about that moment and the audience and not fucking up playing and it just being one unit. So
being creative, it seems like when you're being creative, that can help facilitate getting you there.
Right. So look, I think at the end of our conversation, it's about people just find your passion and just go for it. Don't wait to do it. Just do it now.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing, is go after it, do it.
And don't let your fear stop you. Once you figure out what your thing is, once you figure out what your passion is, once you figure out what you want to do, you have to have the courage to then do it.
Yeah.
And you cannot allow fear of like potential failure or what people tell you or what people will think of you to prevent you from going for it.
Well, look, this has been phenomenal. Hopefully for the audience, people listening, people watching, that people can at least take from these stories, which are all phenomenal. And again, we're laughing about a lot of stuff, and that's just because the three of us are happy to be with each other. We're not together all the time, but hopefully people can take something or take a bit and pieces of what they're saying and be inspired to be the best version of yourself, because that's what 3777 is all about. It's like, just face your fears, go for it, listen to these guys, be supported by these guys, be inspired. And, please, as we wrap this up, sign up to subscribe to the 3777 channel. Also go to the website. We got a bunch of cool stuff. We got our Ronins, which are ambassadors. There's people that are photographers. There's artists, my brother Joe, avatar stuff. It's a plethora of different types of people being the best version of themselves and just aspiring to do things that are great. So please check everything out. We appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.